Hi, friend. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Kayla Tyshen, and I help parents have more confidence in their parenting, more connection with their kids, and more joy in their home. I also talk about my parenting journey with fatigue and illness as a type 1 diabetic. So, subscribe so you don't miss these videos. And if you're a parent looking for support, check out the other videos on my channel for evidence-based support for raising kids in a way that's respectful, that's introspective, and that ultimately leads to deeper relationships with your children. We're going to talk about why tantrums happen and how to use our parenting, use these moments of tantrums to actually build connection and actually build emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. A little bit about me. I am a certified parenting coach. I also just love Montessori, been very inspired by Montessori and just the principles. I think it's amazing that she was like so far ahead of her time. She taught all these things about caring and educating children that she learned through observation that like science is now showing us is actually, the way that children's brains work. So it was really neat just to go through some of the Montessori, orientation courses and learn these things that Maria Montessori taught, and then take some of these classes in like neuroscience, interpersonal neurobiology, somatics, and see how the brain science supports all the things that Maria Montessori taught before there was ways of studying those things. So our goal today is, oh man, I think if we like just take a minute, we can remember the overwhelm that we feel in those like really challenging parenting moments where we just don't know what to do. And we feel the anxiety, we feel the anger, we feel just that stress and the overwhelm. And what's going to help is having some understanding of child development. So that first step is having some understanding of how the brain works, how the nervous system works. And then with that understanding, being able to then go back into those moments, those tough parenting moments, and use connection, regulate ourselves so that we can co-regulate. And so really, connection is the goal in all of this. It's the goal isn't no tantrums ever, because that's just not possible. Kids' brains aren't fully developed, and we're going to talk a little bit about the brain. But every child, for the most part, there are some exceptions, personality, temperament can play a role into this, but for the most part, every child is going to have tantrums. And so it's not how to avoid every tantrum, because if that's our mindset, then we're going to be looking for the tools just to shut down the emotions. And usually those tools consist of either using our power to squash their emotions and overpower them with maybe fear and these kinds of things, or we're gonna appease and we're gonna just give in, and we're gonna just, oh, okay, they want the lollipop, just give them the lollipop. Okay, they don't want me to take the iPad, just let them sit on the iPad all day. Which obviously we know that's not healthy. Kids need boundaries. So yes, every parent has felt overwhelmed, or unsure, or even embarrassed in these situations. Yes, right. And right, I can totally relate to the embarrassment, right? Like, you're at someone's house and your child is freaking out and everyone's staring at you, or you're at the grocery store or whatever it is. You're not alone. And so, yeah, we're going to talk about the brain, and we're going to talk about how we can respond in a way that doesn't just continue to escalate the situation, the dysregulation, in a way that actually does help to de-escalate. And although just some escalation is normal, especially when children, when a boundary's been set, right? Like, they might express emotions about that. So we'll talk about how to regulate ourselves so that we can be more comfortable with their expression of emotions. So, what is a tantrum? It's usually not bad behavior. It's usually that our child has gone over the edge of, they've gone beyond their window of tolerance. It's usually that their nervous system is dysregulated. We're about to get into the brain, but these moments of tantrum or emotional overwhelm are usually because our child's reasoning abilities and thinking abilities have gone offline. They're no longer accessible. I think if we can view a tantrum as our child's asking for help, they're saying, this is too much for me. I can't do it. I don't have the tools yet. I don't have the skills yet. I need your help. And sometimes it's hard for us to hear that message, especially when we're overwhelmed and our nervous system is responding to theirs. We're getting triggered. But if we can keep that in the back of their minds, that these kinds of like emotional outbursts are their way of saying, like, I need you. I need your help. So I really appreciate just this way of being able to look at the brain. So if you take your hand, this would be the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for our, thinking brain, our reasoning, our problem solving, our learning happens here. This is the emotional center of the brain, where we feel fear, where we feel anger, where we feel sadness. And this is the brain stem here. So this is connected to the nervous system. This is our automatic fight, flight, freeze reactions. And Dr. Dan Siegel talks about how if we look at the brain like this part of the brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. So the reasoning, thinking, learning, logical part of the brain takes a very long time to develop. The brain stem, the fight, flight, and freeze responses, pretty much fully developed at birth. And the emotional part of the brain is also, for the most part, pretty in working order. So most of the time, our kids are operating in this part. And we get to help them build the connections to this part. But when our children are in their emotional brains, usually this part is completely offline. So that means that in a tantrum, trying to talk them out of it usually is not going to work. Trying to convince them that there is nothing to be angry about usually doesn't work. They are all up in this part, and so we want to meet them in this part of the brain. And we can actually do that really effectively if we can regulate our nervous systems, if we can, which starts with being able to connect to our own bodies and our own emotions. There are a lot of reasons that tantrums can happen. And different children have different sensory needs as well. And so something that could be calming for one child can actually be really overstimulating for another child. And so you guys can grab one of these later, but this is just like a helpful reminder to, a lot of times what we see above the surface are all of these behaviors, but the root causes are things that a lot of times we can't see. So, okay, unmet needs like sleep, hunger, a full bladder. I know for one of my children, her getting really antsy, moving around, and then there would be a point where it would switch and she would like start bugging people, start like bugging her sister, start like maybe like hitting her sister. And it was all because she would hold her bladder for a really long time, until the point where like she's really struggling, and it was just this dysregulation buildup. And so I have gotten really good at being able to see when it's in the buildup stage. Sometimes we can't always see that though, and we just see the behavior, and we missed the buildup. We missed some of the smaller signs. But if I just came down on her for hitting her sister and was just focused on, the fact that she was hitting, that's actually not going to solve the problem, right? Like, yes, I do want to address that, like, she can't hit her sister and I want to stop her from hitting. But if I just stopped there, it's still going to come out in other ways. And so addressing the fact that, like, okay, she has a full bladder. Let's take care of that. Let's actually address some of the root causes. So, yeah, and those root causes, again, are going to look different for each child, especially children that are maybe more overstimulated by sensory input. So, another situation, one of my daughters, and these little things can just, it's so interesting. I feel like as a parent, we're always just like, okay, what is happening? We're like detectives. There was a point where every morning it was like a huge battle of putting on clothes. Like, what is happening? Like, my daughter just, and then none of the clothes were right. So and then it was like changing a million times, and she stopped wearing all these clothes that like seemed fine. She was just wearing them. And I realized that she had really dry skin. And it was this connection, like okay, and so tantrums in the morning, but also even like she was more prone to being dysregulated throughout the day if she was wearing something that was tight. So it was this realization that her dry skin, like maybe a little bit of eczema, was actually affecting like our whole morning, and then even affecting her ability to regulate throughout the day if she was wearing something tight, if it was hot. And so one, being able to address and put lotion on her arms every day, but also just realizing like, okay, I'm just going to put away all of the clothes that are tight at all. And we're just going to keep loose t-shirts and like loose pants. And for a couple of years, she would not wear any kind of tight, like tights, leggings, anything like that. It all had to be loose fitting. And just that shift really helped. But it was that sensory, discomfort from the tight clothing. Just a disclaimer on this, right? Like it does help to address the underlying needs. And when we can find out what those are or see what those are, or kind of be curious about what's happening, it can be super helpful. But again, it's not that we're trying to eliminate all emotions. We don't want emotionless kids. We want children that can express emotions in a healthy way. And so, yeah, just that little disclaimer there. A couple points about the Montessori perspective. This idea of respecting the child, right? That children are telling us about themselves, right? Through their behavior. They're giving us insight into what they need. And sometimes it does take some detective work and those observation skills. But realizing that they are a human being, a person that's deserving of respect, that's deserving of us digging a little deeper to get curious and uncover what they're communicating. So we'll talk about this a little bit later, but having an environment where our children are set up to succeed can be super helpful for decreasing the frustration. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, but our role as the parent, as the caregiver, is to be present, to be connected with ourselves, and to connect with our child. So what do we do during a tantrum? So like we've kind of already talked about, some of us might have a tendency to disconnect from our own emotions. I know for me personally, growing up, I was told many, many times that I was too emotional. So I was the over emotional one. And it wasn't painted in a good light. So I was the one that just was too emotional. And I also, and I think a lot, this happens to many of us, I didn't learn to pay attention to my body and what my body was trying to say. And I think there can be a variety of reasons for that. One being, oftentimes in today's world, we place a lot of emphasis on thoughts and on our minds, and we forget that we're whole human beings with a whole body down here, and that our body actually communicates so much to us. And so, like, yeah, even things like, waiting to use the restroom when we need to go. In a sense, we kind of have to disconnect from our bodies to do that. Just another thing that I kind of realized a little bit recently, growing up, especially as a young teenage girl, wherever I heard that, learn this from, probably a variety of sources, it was this idea that you always suck in your stomach. And what I didn't realize is that actually doesn't allow us to breathe the way that our bodies are actually designed to breathe. And so later, when I developed anxiety, I did not know how to actually breathe in these situations where I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't get the air into my lungs that I needed. When really, actually, these slow, deep belly breaths are how our bodies was designed to bring in the oxygen that we need to activate the parasympathetic nervous system to bring calm. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, and we'll practice that. But there are all these little ways that we've learned to disconnect from our bodies. And so learning to tune in to what our body is saying. Another thing that is really easy to do is in these moments, and I am guilty, in these moments of overwhelm with my children, what I naturally, instead of feeling the overwhelm and sitting in it and being present, what my natural inclination is to go to my phone and disconnect. It's like, okay, I won't have to feel it. I won't have to feel the discomfort if I'm scrolling. And I think that's another just really tempting way to actually disconnect from what our bodies are trying to say. So regulating ourselves, there's a lot of talk about this idea of co-regulation. And I think there's a misunderstanding that co-regulation means getting the child to calm down. And it's actually not what it means. What's really neat about our bodies and about our nervous systems is that our bodies are always communicating to each other. And we actually are very perceptive beings. Like whether it's with our ears or just being able to sense in our bodies, like we can really tell without even realizing it, how someone else's nervous system is doing. So our senses actually take in information that other people are sending through their body language. And so our senses can actually pick up other people's regulation or dysregulation and then automatically respond and kind of mirror that regulation or dysregulation. And so if we are not intentional about connecting with our bodies and regulating ourselves, then we're more likely to just go into the automatic reactions or just the primal way that our bodies receive information and then respond. So if I'm not aware, then when my child is dysregulated, I'm most likely gonna pick up that dysregulation and will carry that dysregulation for myself. And in those types of situations, right, in a tantrum, if I'm overreacting or reacting from a place of dysregulation, then that further dysregulates my child. And then they react in a way that further dysregulates me. And so it's basically a cycle where we just keep, like, the dysregulation just continues and continues increasing. But if we can regulate ourselves, then our bodies actually communicate that regulation to our child. So if we can be connected with ourselves, be aware. So there's a really great phrase that Dr. Dan Siegel came up with called name it to tame it. And this is for children and adults. When we can actually identify and put a name to our emotions and also our physiological responses. So, wow, I'm feeling really angry right now. And I can feel that my heart is beating really fast and that my breathing is really rapid, or I have a pit in my stomach right now. When we can actually name these things, it helps to lower our own dysregulation. And so that's why one of the great tools in co-regulating with our children, once we're regulated ourselves, once we've gone through that, is to help them identify their emotions. And so for super young kids, it can be really simple. Something as simple as, you are really upset right now. I see that. And it's just that validation and that helping them to put a name to it. Validate what it is they're upset about. And oftentimes it does make sense, right? Like sometimes as adults, like we expect more from our child than like we expect from ourselves, or that we expect our child to respond in a way that we might not even respond with. When a child is upset that another kid took their toy, we would probably be upset too if someone came and stole something from us or took something from us that we were using or that's important to us, right? Like even just seeing our children in these moments where, yeah, we might just be like, oh, class, like it's fine. The other kid wants to play with it. Like they actually, yeah, that is upsetting when someone else takes your toy. Like that is really hard. You were playing with that. So anyways, just validating and acknowledging, their emotions and also why they might be feeling that way is really helpful. A point on, just prioritizing safety. Like, yes, we kind of talked about this earlier. Yes, we do want to stop behaviors that hurt people. Like that is a boundary. That's a good boundary for us to have. Like hurting people is not okay. And so I think just having the realization that hurting people is not okay. We are here to help to teach our child that and to help them. It's also really normal though. It is so normal for kids to not be able to manage their reactions, right? We talked about how that upstairs brain goes online. They're completely acting in their primal brain. And so if a child takes their toy, that feels like a life-threatening situation, and they're going to react in a way that to us might seem unreasonable, but to them, this is survival. This is their toy that they were playing with. And so recognizing that it's very normal for a child to respond with hitting or these other behaviors that are still not acceptable, but also they're normal. And so realizing that it's our job as the adult, as the one with the fully developed brain, it's our job to step in when our child has completely lost connection with their logical thinking brain. So it's our job to be the one to stop them in the most, kind way we can, but also firm. Like we're not gonna let anyone get hurt. Like, and children need that confidence from us too, that we've got them. They've lost it. They are out of control, but we're here. We've got it. We're going to keep you safe. I'm going to keep me safe. And I'm going to help you do that. And we'll get through this together. Okay. So the inner work, we were talking a little bit about this before we got started, but I feel like this is the hardest work of parenting, is the inner work that it takes. We talked about how as moms, we have so much work, housework, cooking the meals, doing the dishes, cleaning the house, taking kids to different activities. But I feel like this is the hardest part. This is what requires us to really dig deep into things that are really uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but I'd personally just rather not think about, the deep negative emotions. Like my tendency is to just avoid negative emotions, avoid conflict. But ultimately, if we can dig deep and face those things and actually work through those things, it's so beautiful. And I've experienced firsthand just the beauty of like working through unhealed wounds. And I still have, it's a lifelong journey. It's not like you just do it a few times and then it's all done. But I think just that awareness and that willingness to go to those places it actually just is so freeing. It's so freeing, and it has really impacted every one of my relationships in a very positive way. So, and this is what allows us to really connect with our children, right? Like to really have that deep relationship. I think, as our children grow, and especially as they get into elementary school and then middle school and then high school and then become adults, like we want deep relationships with our kids. And that does really take us like working through our unhealed wounds and digging deep into ourselves to be available for those deep, intimate connections. If we do feel like we're uncomfortable with our child's negative emotions, if we are going to strategies like using anger or control to try to shut down their negative emotions, or if we're trying to pacify and just give in to help stop the negative emotions. Really getting curious about why that might be is just so helpful. And I think, yeah, just having that curiosity is the first step. We're gonna do just a quick regulating practice and just do some deep belly breaths. We'll do it together because this is just so helpful to have as a daily practice, because if we actually set up this kind of thing as a daily practice, say in the morning when we wake up or at night before we go to bed, it becomes a lot more easily accessible in the really challenging moments where we are dysregulated. So the more we practice it when we're regulated, the more we'll be able to actually use it when we're dysregulated. So if everyone just wants to get somewhat comfortable, and you can close your eyes if that feels good to you. Just take a couple deep breaths. You can breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And when you do, try to practice expanding your belly as you breathe in. And I'll just do a little counting. It can be really helpful if on the exhale, we really try to slow that down, a really slow exhale. So if we do like 4 counts on the inhale, and then 5 to 6 counts on the exhale, that can also really help to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that helps us to calm down. So I'll go ahead and count to 4 on the inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll count to 6 on the exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can take one more if you would like. Another practice that I'd like to invite you into, just to bring a little bit of awareness to the body. Take your, we'll say, right arm and bring it to your left arm and just gently massage down your arm. To your hand. And I want you to just notice the difference in your arms. Does it feel different? Feels different, huh? And so you can take your other arm and just do that same thing. Something like this. And as if we're not like used to doing things like that, it might feel a little like silly or something. But even just like the simplicity of these types of things is so helpful when it comes to regulating our own nervous systems, to bringing awareness into how our body's feeling, and really activating that parasympathetic nervous system. So that when we're triggered, that's the sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze responses that are at play. And so simple things like breathing and like self-touch or bringing awareness to the body are very helpful for those moments, are a helpful step towards regulating ourselves. So after a tantrum, we talked about what to do in a tantrum to regulate ourselves in order to co-regulate, and we can help our child by validating what they're feeling, by helping them to name their emotions. But really it's so, especially for really young children, like when we're talking about nursery age, they are so dependent on us for that co-regulation. And yeah, I think I kind of talked about this, but didn't necessarily say it like this. Our children can still feel our dysregulation, even if we try to act calm. So if we're dysregulated, but we try to act calm, that's not co-regulation. They can still feel it. After the tantrum, we're reconnecting. And it's at this point, once everyone is calm, that then we can maybe talk through things that then, once their upstairs brain is brought back online, that maybe if there's something that we want to brainstorm how we can do different next time, a conversation we want to have, brainstorming a solution if it's, an ongoing issue, that's going to happen after everyone's calm. Just some simple strategies. Again, we're not trying to eliminate tantrums. We're not trying to eliminate emotions. We want healthy expression of emotions. But we also, want our children to, we obviously don't want to be, intentionally dysregulating our kids, right? So things like consistent routines can be really helpful. And some kids need more structure than others. So some kids really need things to be very clear, very structured, very much, we do this every day and we do it the same way. And a lot of times structure allows for flexibility. So when we have the structures in place, it allows us to then be able to be flexible and kind of go with the flow if things come up. Another important thing is offering choices, really giving opportunity for independence, giving opportunity for children to be able to do things themselves. I think it's so tempting for parents today to want to hover and do everything for, do so much for our child, or we see them struggling. And again, we're uncomfortable with negative emotions. They're starting to get frustrated. And we just it is hard sometimes when we see our child getting frustrated to not step in, but really holding ourselves back, regulating ourselves, reminding ourselves that frustration's okay, and allowing them to do things on their own and to be frustrated, they, in order to build that frustration tolerance, they actually need to experience frustration. So this is really important for resilience. When we look at the stress cycle, there's a trigger, and we actually, in dysregulation, need to have some sort of release to come back to being regulated. So, for us adults, right, we're talking about in these moments when we're dysregulated, what can we do to help regulate ourselves? We can name our emotions, we can notice our body, we can do deep breathing. That's how we're completing the stress cycle. But there are a lot of ways to complete the stress cycle. So moving our bodies, whether it's like going for a run or doing something even just right there, that's like doing jumping jacks, things like that. So all that to say, sometimes our children, like the best way for them to complete the stress cycle is to just release all of their emotions. And if it's cut short, if it's squashed, if it's, appeased, then that actually doesn't let them complete that cycle, to just get it all out. Like sometimes, and there can be a lot of different factors, right? Like if our kid is coming home from school and it's been a super stressful day at school, right? Like they have all this built up stress that then they get home and they just need to release it. And so we can find other ways for them to do that, if we're finding that, like, particularly in these times of the day, every day, like my kid needs to release all the stress that's built up. And so we're gonna go to the park every day, or walk around the block before we walk into the house every day. So there are things that we can do to help kind of release that stress in maybe more productive ways. But yeah, sometimes our kids just need to cry and scream, and right, we stop hitting. If there are behaviors that we're setting boundaries around, we hold those boundaries. But I noticed with my daughter, there was a very clear point where I realized, I don't have to get her to calm down. And I was just like, okay, like she's just gonna scream and cry, and we're just gonna let it happen. And then there's a point where it switches, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm ready to go do XYZ. If our goal is to try to stop the tantrum, and our child feels that we're just trying to get them to stop. Kids are so good at picking up on the like incongruency. If I'm saying it's okay to cry, but I'm actually feeling super uncomfortable with the crying, then they can feel like she's saying it's okay to cry, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like she wants me to stop. And so I know that that's been the case for me when it's like, I just use the script. Thanks so much for watching my video. Leave any questions you have in the comments and I will get back to you. If you are needing support in your parenting and you're interested in working with me, check out my website, www.yourconsciousparentcoach.com. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next video.